Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Insights podcast. On today's episode of the Opportunity Insights series, we are going to get to know more of the team that makes the right mortgage happen. I'm your host today, Jaydn Rigley, one of the national account managers here at the network. And joining us for this edition of the Insights podcast, I'm excited to welcome two special guests. Kim Lissner, another one of our national account managers and a truly key part of the TRM family, and Paul Jeal, Principal and Director of Monument Financial Planning Limited, one of our valued appointed representatives here at The Right Mortgage. So welcome to your first time on the podcast, and thank you both for joining.
Thank you.
Hello.
For today's insight, we are going to discuss all things to consider when looking to join a network with the help of Paul, who has had to make these decisions in the past, and Kim, who has been doing this job for a long time and so does have a lot of insight to share with us. So to kick things off, the advisor landscape is shifting and fast. We've seen big changes in the network space and also in the DA world, with rising costs, a lot more movement from DA to AR models, and a lot of movement within networks, and the number of DA firms taking a huge dip. Kim, when you're speaking with prospects, what are you hearing at the moment? Why are advisors looking to leave their current setup?
There's a range of things why advisors look to leave their current setup, whether that's they're a firm looking to move, or they're an advisor looking to move to another firm or to set up on their own. Support is a huge thing, because I think support obviously is the bricks that keeps everything up. A lot of people saying they feel unsupportive. They're looking to diversify into different product areas, and the networks are quite restrictive doing that. They find that the compliance is changing all the time, and it's not clear of what they can and can't do. Even down to taking on advisors, the restrictions on which advisors they can take on, the trainees, or how they can take on, and the time sometimes it takes to take those advisors on. Obviously, costs are a factor that people do look at, but generically it would be the support, and that obviously fits into the products, the compliance, the costs, and everything. Where obviously at the Right Mortgage, we are very much an accessible network.
Thank you, Kim. So, Paul, from your own experience, what were your reasons for looking for changing your current setup?
Before coming here, and I've been here a little while now, we were directly authorised, and I think everyone's reasons are slightly different depending on where you're coming from, i.e. another AR or DA. As I mentioned, we were DA, and I felt that as regulation was changing and there was developments within the FCA and the rules and the infrastructure, I felt there was added benefit to being part of an organisation where there was a greater degree of support, so you weren't having to do all of the other stuff yourself, as well as trying to run a business and see clients and earn a living. I felt that the support offered by someone else being responsible for the infrastructure, the delivering of the training, understanding the regulatory changes, and planning for the future was something that other people probably do better than I could, and the time it took me to do it took away from my core activity. So the cost of trying to do that myself far outweighed the benefit of continuing to do so. So basically, my reasons were wanting to be part of something and have other people be able to bring things to the table that weren't necessarily the things that were my strong points.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So, if we talk about doing your due diligence, if you were looking around today, what would you want to know before joining a network?
I think many things. I think understanding what the transition looks like. So what is what's the downtime, what's the uptime, what's the time away from selling, understanding what happens to current pipeline, exit fees, onboarding fees, any contractual issues needs to be properly looked at these days and understood. And again, obviously not every advisor firm is overly familiar with contract law. So I think having people who can explain things to you, understand what the journey looks like. I think having the reassurance of talking to people who, without want of a better phrase, do this day in, day out, and they help people come on board, their understanding of, what you think it looks like and what it actually looks like. And they can, look at a bespoke timeline for you as to how they perceive your journey is going to look like and take. Understanding the compliance perspective of the company. I think compliance is obviously massively important, but it can be pro-business or less pro-business, as is I'm aware sometimes the case. Here I've found, we're looking, the ethos is correct, the balance of the input and the I think understanding how they support you to write quality business. And I think quality business is the key, because no one wants to write poor quality business, but being able to write quality business across a good spread of products. What products are available? How is that delivered? If you want to take on board new products, how do you get to being competent in those areas? How does your staff transition? All of these things lead to making an informed decision. And I think that is ultimately the most important thing, is if you make a big decision to change from DA to AR or from AR to AR, it's almost like getting married and divorced. You don't want to do it every week, every year, because it's, it is a bit stressful, and it is a bit of a, it's a big event. So when you do it, make sure that you've done your due diligence to understand where you're going, why you're going there, why you're leaving where you are, what that looks like in the journey, and what it looks like when you're there. And I think asking lots of questions, speaking to advisors who are already with that firm, and you can do that on the FCA register, and actually getting a proper understanding of what you're doing and why, and what that looks like.
Thank you, Paul. So, Kim, are there any sort of key questions you think our advisors often forget to ask?
Yeah, so I think what advisors need to work out, really, or firms, what is it? What's the reason why you're looking? There is also always a reason why you're looking. And obviously that should form quite a key question to ask, whether that's different products, feeling restricted on things, not being able to grow your business the way you want to. We do remember that it's your business. So therefore, if you want to grow it in a certain way, you need to have the freedom to be able to do that. Obviously fitting in with the FCA regulations, etc. But it's also thinking about, what do you like from your current network? Because again, those things are important to you. So it's, everybody's different, and they're all going to have their different questions set. But there are some really important things that come up all the time. Paul's obviously mentioned it, exit fees. Amanda Wilson, one of our founder owners, director, for any of you on LinkedIn or Facebook, I'm sure you will see some of her comments with regards to exit fees. We're quite passionate about these. We don't have exit fees ourselves as a network, but many networks do. And it's very important when you're looking at networks and who you want to join, that network might evolve and change, and therefore the network you join initially might not be the network in 5-6 years time. And that's very much with the corporate networks. If they get sold by, for example, they're owned by a certain financial institution, they get sold to another one, the board changes, the direction of that network changes, and their risk and all the rest of it. So if you outgrow a network, you want to have the confidence that you can exit freely. So exit fees are really something that no one seems to talk about. And remember, the recruiter's going to tell you what they want you to hear. They're not going to tell you about these things unless you ask the question. Loaded premiums, another one. Again, they're not going to, no one's going to tell you they've got a loaded premium until you ask that question. I'm pleased to say, the Right Mortgage, we don't load our premiums. Hidden fees such as PI, FCA. I always say to people, work out your pounds, shillings and costs. Ignore what's a retention someone's saying, 8%, such and such is saying they're going to give me 8%. You're only saying you're going to give me 12%. Well, it's 8% of what? Plus as well, they have these hidden, PI costs, FCA costs that are, again, not always spoke about. And then you'll find out you're paying another 1.5% towards PI off your turnover, which, as soon as you're doing banking over £30,000 a year, actually then turns out to be higher than what you would do if you're paying a flat fee of £150 a month. So it's looking at things like that. And also, watch out for golden handshakes. We're hearing a lot of it recently. Why people that, people should be comfortable in their network proposition to join that, rather than, here you go, here's 30,000, come and join us, it will all be great. Because there's obviously reasons for that. And also, nothing's for free. It's either going to be tagged on at the back, at the end of your relationship with that network, or also they will tweak retentions, they will tweak what you see in prop fees and commission rates and all the rest of it. So nothing is ever given for free. And it's like the old saying, is it the frying? Don't go from the frying pan to the fire. Taking a golden handshake. No one's going to give you something for free. I've met, doing this job 25 years. I've met a number of. I remember one broker saying to me, he could, decorate his entire downstairs toilet with share certificates, golden handshake stuff that he's been given over the years that he's ended up having to pay back. So just really check those contracts, ask to see copies of the contracts, ask these questions, because unless you ask, they won't always tell you.
Thanks, Kim. I mean, to add to that, you could ask for a copy of an illustration to make sure that the premiums are not loaded, because that's another thing. A lot of people say it's not loaded because it's not loaded next to what. If it's just one panel they can offer, then technically they're not loaded. So definitely ask to see the illustration and compare that to what you are getting at the moment. And as Paul mentioned, do your own research, check the FCA register. You can search the network, take a few firms and give them a ring and speak to them, because real feedback is going to matter a lot more than any sort of shiny incentives that people try and offer you anyway. So if we move over to support, because this is where things can make or break the experience. So Kim, what level of support should advisors expect from a network?
I think at the very least, from a support level, is communication. It's a huge thing. When you look at the size of the network, have they got the staff and infrastructure in place to actually be able to deal with all their firms? And it's the relationship building. You want to build a relationship. You don't want to have a different regional manager, every 6 months, or have your compliance manager changed. You want to be able to build a relationship with them and be able to pick up the phone and speak to somebody. At The Right Mortgage, we're quite passionate that everyone from the top down is accessible. That comes from our directors, and that is exactly the ethos that we live by. That everyone needs to be accessible. Support wise, from a good CRM system, in the last 18 months, we've moved to Acre, which, CRM systems have really changed, from back in the day, very much in recent years. That the old historic systems they won't take you to the next phase. So support wise, you really need a CRM system that's going to support you and your client on their journey for the next, 10, 20 years and beyond. And a lot of these new CRM systems, they are linking in with, lenders systems. The next one will be Protect, and GI and all the rest of it. So you really need a CRM system that's going to support your business to grow. Development support is a big one. If you're looking to grow your business, that could be different product areas. It could be, through, generating new customer base. Again, you want someone to be able to support you, someone to throw ideas off. Social media is a huge thing since COVID. Brokers that never thought they would go down the path of having to do social media, do it. And you want a marketing team to support you with regards to that. Regularly updated template adverts that you can use. You're not marketing people, you're salespeople, you're advisors. So, you might not have the skill set or the systems to be able to design that stuff. Looking for a marketing team that does. And when you do your own social media or any sort of financial promotions, you want to have a team, again, that you can actually talk to, have a conversation with, and turn the things around quickly. Our FP team turn most promotions around the same day. And if it's not,
to be exact.
98% to be exact, as Jaydn just said. So, these are really things that you need to see support-wise. But again, it's going back to the previous question. What do you want from support? And ask that question of the recruiter. What level of support will they give you in this? Because again, if you don't ask the question, you won't necessarily be told, or you'll be told what they want you to hear.
Thank you, Kim. I couldn't actually agree more. I mean, it's not just about having the tools, it's knowing how to use them. If you're spending all of your time on admin or content creation, it takes that time away from your clients. So the right marketing and development support can really help elevate your business. Paul, what's your experience been like since joining? Is there any support that's actually really stood out for you?
I think it's a collective view of everything, really. I mean, coming on board, I had an existing firm, we had some existing processes. Some of those processes we were able to adapt into the new things, so there was some continuity. So I think that was important. But I think, as Kim's alluded to, especially the smaller firm of advisors, you've got the principal. They're in charge of everything from systems creation, systems maintenance, creating new email accounts, developing brochures, admin, staff training. It's too much, and I think as having the support of people who are, I mean, the marketing department are good at marketing. The compliance department are good at compliance. There's a reason that there's multiple departments as opposed to one person doing all of these things, because they'll end up doing it badly. And I think if you as an advisor try to do everything yourself and don't have, because we can't all be experts at everything. So I think having the infrastructure and the support and the right people around you where you can utilize it as much or as little as you need, you can gain and tap into other people's experience and expertise, which will far exceed your own, and you can get a much better outcome much quicker. So I think having a central office number and being able to press option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, and speak to the right people at the right time. No pun there, of course. Then that's massively important. If I've got an issue with trying to create an email account, I can get some help with it. If I need some assistance with generating some sort of punchy marketing material, I can tap into that expertise, far exceeding my own. Obviously, we talked about historic systems and things. Obviously, I'm a slightly historic advisor now, and we can't be good at all these things. So having the infrastructure and the support to know that we are doing something correctly, we can access the expertise, and just a second opinion is invaluable sometimes. Just being able to bounce something off someone and say, what do you think to this, what do you think to that, knowing that person is knowledgeable in what you're asking them, and secondly they're working with you to help drive your business forward. I think ultimately the best thing of this experience for me was, still got to do the work, I've still got to see the clients, I've still got to do the mileage and the admin. All of these things still need to be done. There's no magic button, but it's about having people around you and support to help make that easier. The system, as Kim's alluded to, has changed recently. Massive step in the right direction. It's much more intuitive. It does stuff for you. I needed to learn it. I didn't know it the first time I used it, so I've had to understand how it works and how I integrate within it, and I've had to make some slight changes. But it's all been positive, and it's all taken me further forward. So I think for me, the biggest thing, the most support that I found was, I felt like I worked with people as opposed to working on my own, and that was a big thing for me, and it's helped sort of drip into every other aspect of the business, and how you feel basically massively affects what you achieve.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for sharing. If we now start talking about onboarding, so this is arguably one of the most nerve-wracking parts of joining a new network. Paul, what did you do to prepare? Like, how did the process go for you? I know it's a long time ago now.
Well, it was a while ago, but I think whenever you do something new in life, whether it's changing networks, moving from AR to DA, it's important to understand what that looks like. So where are you now? What is your position? What does the road look like? Are there any pitfalls, any potential things to avoid? What is the time? How much time is going to be taken in downtime and in transition? How much work? How much effort? How much of your pipeline are you going to keep? You're going to lose? How quickly before you can see new customers and start rebuilding? And I think understanding all aspects of the journey, and being able to, what forms do you need? What processes do you need? What are provided? What do you need to tweak? What do you need to personalize? Who can help with what? And that all feeds back to what I said before about, rather than trying to do it all yourself, you can, have your hand held as much or as little as you need. But for me, it was all about, I need to know because very few advisors are set on millions and millions of pounds. It's about, we work hard, we earn a reasonable living, but it's all about making sure that journey from what I'm doing now to the reasons why I'm looking to change it, to being in a position that I'm actively operating within the bit I've so looked to change, how long is that going to take? What does it involve time wise, finance wise, and how quickly can I become effective again?
Thank you for sharing. So, Kim, would you say there's anything that's evolved today? How have the onboarding processes evolved? What should advisors expect now?
Yeah, well, what I always say to people firstly is, no network's got a magic wand to wave at the FCA. No network's got a special route at the FCA that they can get anybody signed up any quicker. We all have to follow the same process. Now, as your recruiter, we will talk you through that process. We will understand, we will talk if there's any concerns around anything financial or criminal. We're very open, everything's private and confidential, but we chat those things through with you, and we can we can speak to our team to put situations or scenarios through before you're even doing an application. But 99.99% of the time, obviously you need to do the application so we can make an assessment on it. But the onboarding process, it's how long's a piece of string. We as a network get our checks and everything done very quickly. We then do depend on third parties. So that's namely referencing. It's also we depend on that advisor to make sure that when we're asking for further information, because someone said something on a reference or we found something when we've searched them, that we just need more information, it's getting that back to us as quickly as possible. But the whole point with the onboarding is we can do a lot of this before you even have to notify your current place. So we can get everything done before the current place is notified so we can go to the FCA. But in reality, it's dependent on third parties, but we will manage that onboarding. We will chat to you to make sure that when you're looking to come across, as Paul's mentioned previously, you're looking at your pipeline, how much pipeline can you get out the system? And also, just ensuring that you have the money behind you to be able to see whether it's not a company that you've got, where you've got staff and advisors, or whether you're a one-man band, so you can ensure you can carry on functioning, whether or not that's paying for offices or rent, etc., or whether or not it's literally simply also down to your living expenses. We will talk that through to make sure that the onboarding process is very much planned and structured for you. And we're always here to chat it through, and to go through and to chase things up for you as well.
Yeah, that's fab, Kim. I think in terms of how things have changed, I'd say obviously we will do as much as we can to prevent as little disruption to your business as possible, even so much so as operating the referral service as well. So you are still able to service your clients if there is any downtime that's out of our hands to control. So even things like that, we'll always try and find ways to sort of make the transition as streamlined as possible for the firms. So if we go now to the final thoughts, what would your one golden piece of advice be for any advisor thinking of switching networks?
I think from that perspective, I think as an advisor, you almost become the client. So I think if you think of it as your clients when you're doing a remortgage or a purchase, you've got some idea about how some of this stuff works. But let's be honest, you don't change networks very often.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you do it right, you do it once. I think from a point of view of the reasoning why the client needs you as an advisor also applies in this context, in that it's asking the right questions, understanding what it looks like, it's understanding if there's going to pay twice the mortgage 1 month, and I think understanding what the journey looks like dictates whether the journey is a good one or not. If there's no hidden surprises, no nasty surprises, everything is as you expected it to be, then the decision that you made was proven to be the right decision. So I think the role that you play for your customers as advisors and in helping them understand what that journey looks like is massively applicable to this, because it's about having someone to ask, what does this look like? What does that look like? How long is it going to take? And I think for me, the onboard training was good. I hit the road running, understood what the systems look like. I understand where to find things. I understood what I needed to do, but anything I couldn't remember, because there's always a lot of information to take on board, I knew and I felt comfortable in approaching people to help me. It wasn't a case, just like your clients don't mind asking silly questions. There are no silly questions. It's the support was there when I needed it. It was a smooth transaction, and yeah, I think the one bit of advice I would give everybody is engage, talk, and listen, and allow yourself to be helped, because we all work. The network are working to make you as successful as possible, which in turn makes them as successful as possible.
Thank you. Kim, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's just remembering the reason of why you were looking to move networks in the first place. As Paul said, you've got to make sure it's right and plan it and all the rest of it. But the reason you were looking, that's not going to get any better where you are. So at some point, you're going to have to go through the transition. So it's just remembering that. And the other thing is obviously trust your instinct when you're speaking to the firms. So many firms, obviously decide on a route, and then suddenly they get a little carrot dangled in front of them, namely in a golden handshake. And then that changes the route they were looking to go. I've spoken to firms before, recently in the last year, that it was very important to them that they didn't have loaded premiums. But as soon as a carrot was dangled, suddenly they were accepted a loaded premium network, and that was the right route for them. So it's remembering your gut, because you're making a short-term switch, because it's never going to fix the problem of why you were looking in the first place. And as we've mentioned previously, have a look on the FCA register. I could give, you could ask me, can I speak to another firm that's within your network? Of course you can, but I'm going to give you who I want you to speak to. But at the end of the day, the FCA register, it's totally open. Ring them up, ask them. They will tell you in black and white what's good and what's bad. Remember, a recruiter to a degree will only tell you what they want you to hear. And that's why you have to ask those questions. So really make sure that you do your research, you write down the questions and the things that are important to you. And have a look at the Facebook groups. People will mention things on there, and speak to the recruiter. No honest recruiter will put another network down, but they will pinpoint, certain features of that network that are different to yours, such as, for example, exit fees or loaded premiums or reduced mortgage panels. There's many things, that they can help with, but really trust your gut, trust your instinct.
Thanks, Kim. That's brilliant advice. I think, as you said, making that decision to move, trusting your gut, and speaking to the advisors, I think is a great way to make that final leap. If anyone is listening that does want to have a completely informal, no pressure chat, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to help you explore your options. But that is pretty much it for today. So thank you, Kim and Paul, for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks
Thank you very much.
all your thoughts and input. And thank you to everyone that has listened to today's episode. If you'd like to tune into the next one, then I'm sure we'll be putting some marketing about that soon. But yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.